The boroughs are New York City. The burbs are everywhere else. Real estate is the ultimate game of risk and reward. It's the biggest investment most people ever make. Fortunes are made over a lifetime and lost in a day. And we're not playing with monopoly money. How do you stay ahead? Who's buying? Who's selling? And why? What do they know? We want the truth. You need an edge. Boroughs and Burbs is your secret weapon, giving you the insider knowledge and strategies you need to succeed in the high-stakes world of real estate. From Palm Beach to Palm Springs, Manhattan to Malibu, we press the experts to expose the pain, find the deals, and occasionally predict the future. That's Boroughs and Burbs, Thursdays, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. Because everyone can make money in real estate.
Welcome, everybody. Boroughs and Burbs, number 209, Season 6. Today, Creative Titles with Caleb Christopher from Creative Title Company, Amanda Burns, Esquire, representing Connecticut and New York as an attorney. But first, let me hit my screens of introductions. We are Boroughs and Burbs, and you can find us at boroughsandburbs.com. About a half hour after the show goes live on Thursday afternoon, 3 o'clock. Last week, we did estate, trust, and probate. And this week, titles. I promise you we'll go back to some exotic location after today's show. I want to thank our sponsor, Grace Farms. You'll find them at gracefarms.org, celebrating 10 years. Check out their calendar and support them by buying their teas and coffees on their website. Roberto Cabrera, you'll find him at robertocabrera.com. He's a licensed agent in New York with Brent Harris Stevens. And I am that guy in the bow tie there, John Engel, with the Engel team at Douglas Elliman in Connecticut. And you'll find me at theengleteam.com. Today, we have Amanda Burns, Esquire, principal of Amanda Amato Burns Law, LLC in Greenwich, Connecticut. And why? Because once we were presented, our producer was presented with a show on titles, we said, well, no titles get done here in Connecticut where we don't just call a lawyer and say, take care of it. So today we called Amanda and we said, could you just take care of it? Caleb, on the other hand, works nationally, and he is going to tell us about creative titles, and we're going to learn about all these different ways of being a creative title company and all the different places he does business. So without further ado, welcome, Caleb. Welcome, Amanda. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And welcome, Roberto. Where are you hailing from today?
I am on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I apologize. I just got back from Spain last night, and I'm a bit scrambled, and I have 1,000 things happening.
Don't apologize. Our viewers don't know how scrambled you are. You look
Oh, I think they do. I think they do.
So let's begin with Caleb. Caleb pitched us and said, we need to do a show on creative title. And like most agents, you and I said, why? Why do I need creative title? I, as an agent, rely on the lawyer to handle titles for me. I don't even know what a creative title is. So, Caleb, why don't we begin with you? What is creative title and why do we need to do a show on this?
Caleb, convince me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Here.
So creative finance transactions, when people buy and sell real estate without a traditional lender in place. And so that'll include subject to, seller finance, contract for deed, all these non-traditional transactions. Now, I'm first to say these are weird and you should not turn to these first. However, when people get backed into a corner, when the market slows down and they're stuck on a house, or they're stuck on their price, or they would have to come out of pocket to pay, like to close on a transaction, you start looking at alternatives. What can we do to reduce the closing costs, or to hit my price, or whatever that is that they're trying to accomplish? And so when there's a clear purpose, a creative finance transaction is an appropriate solution to the problem. But creative finance is to solve a problem, not just for kicks and grins to do stuff weird. And so I run a consulting firm that helps people do these deals. And I'm big on safe, legal, and ethical. And so if it's not the right deal, I help people make the decision to go back to normal. MLS transactions, sometimes it's better to lose a few $1,000s than to do it creatively and get in bed with somebody for the next 10 years where they're paying your mortgage. Like, you can get pretty weird on these transactions. And so that's Creative TC is where I started solving that problem. And then I just opened a title company and we're in Colorado first. And because we understand how to do these transactions, people turn to us.
Okay.
Can
It
you give
seems to
me
me,
just one practical example,
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
that I have a perspective of exactly what you mean?
and
Okay.
where? Because it occurs to me that
I
this
own
is
it. I'll tell
tailor
you.
built for Colorado and Florida. And we have a lot of clients doing business in Florida where they don't have an attorney in the middle of the transaction.
Well, I will be honest. I have a harder time getting these across the finish line with attorneys involved because they're constantly talking about this risk, and I agree. There are a lot of risks, and so I'm about people making informed decisions, and so I'm there to help. But I'm a consultant, not a licensed attorney, and so all I can do is help people make those decisions. So, and you're right. Colorado is where I own my first sub two deal, and here's the scenario: husband and wife talk to an agent. Agent says, "Oh yeah, we can sell your house for more than what you owe." They all say that. Whatever. And so they list it. It doesn't work out, but they already bought their other house. So now they've got two house payments. They just had a baby. They just moved 45 minutes away, still making two house payments. It goes more than 6 months on the MLS, doesn't sell. It's basically worth what they owe on it. And they would have to come out of pocket $15,000, $20,000 to sell it, even if somebody would buy it, but they wouldn't. And so a wholesaler, the people who, hey, cash offer, calls these people and they're like, the cash offer is not going to work. That's 70,000 less than what I owe. Makes sense. And so that wholesaler calls me. They say, Caleb, can you fix this for these people? I know you do creative finance. They're kind of stuck. So I talk to them. The wife works in financial services. She's like, I can't miss payments. It will jeopardize my job. And I said, look, here's my credit score. I will make your payments for you. I'm jumping ahead of that conversation. I'm fast forwarding. But my business model is to rent out real estate. So I'll take over the payments. It's still your loan, but this doesn't cash flow. I actually told them this is negative cash flow. That's why nobody's buying it. So if you paid me $200 a month for 2 years until I can raise rent, I will just take the house off your hands. I will manage it. I will pay it even if there's no tenant there. I will make the payments. Here's my credit score history. I've survived COVID and paid out of my savings account so that I never missed a mortgage payment. And so I built that rapport with them. 2 days later, they signed the house over to me. Well, they agreed on a contract and then we went and closed. But I took over that property, made some basic repairs, but my out of pocket was repairs and then sitting vacant for 2 months while I waited to get it rented. And now they have two loans open just like they already did, but one of them is paid by me and generally by a tenant, sometimes not when it's vacant. But it's a 3.625 interest rate. So that's very attractive for me as an investor. Low entry fee, low interest rate that I can't get otherwise. And so some tenant is paying down the debt, and I'm taking care of this to make sure that they don't have any missed payments on their credit record.
How does this story end?
It ends with me refinancing in a few years, maybe, if it makes sense. But 3.625, I'm not looking to let go of that too early. And I told them that, look, I will make the payments for you. It's still your loan. It's still your credit on the line. I'm giving you a wraparound mortgage basically so that you can foreclose on me if I don't make payments. But that doesn't help you because you would have to pay for the foreclosure. You would have to pay for the missed payments to keep your credit in good standing. And I'm way down in the weeds right now, but this is the level of detail I want to work through with buyers and sellers to make sure that they understand the nature of their creative finance transaction. But the end result is they're helped because they would have had to go into foreclosure or a short sale or something else, and it would have damaged their credit and potentially jeopardized the woman's job.
I get it. I think I get it. And you took title to the property.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they have to foreclose on you
Yep.
if you don't meet your contractual obligations.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, being an ethical person, I would just give it back, right? If I can't meet the standards, I would have a call with them and say, hey, I'm having trouble making the monthly payment. But why wouldn't I just sell it on the MLS at that point?
Yeah, I think ethics are all well and fine, but how, as a lawyer, I don't know if I would, you seem like a nice guy, you seem great. I'm sure you're ethical, but how that's worth the paper it's written on. Do you provide some sort of indemnity? How do we ensure this?
We don't. It's the right to foreclose. Usually in these, and you're asking very good questions. And this is the risk that people have to understand and accept. Usually it's either accept a foreclosure or accept somebody else throwing a bunch of skin in the game, right? Because usually it's not just I walk in with zero out of pocket to take over a deal. Usually the investors who find deals are like, the seller is already 6 months behind on their mortgage. And it's like, all right, I have to catch up $28,000 worth of payments up front to get the mortgage back into back current, and then start making regular payments and do some repairs. And so it's like the person who's taking over this property is still 30, 40, $70,000 out of pocket to get into it. So they've got skin in the game. So money is a bit of a motivator there, but you can also still meet dirtbags anywhere who intend to just, it's what is it, equity skimming, when they take payments in on the renter side and don't pay the mortgage, and it's your only recourse is foreclosure on that.
How does the lender feel about all this? It occurs to me that the lender who already owns the first property in Colorado, and as now there's a new lender making a loan on the new property in Colorado, is the old lender aware that that you've taken title to the property and taken a contractual obligation to make the payments?
Yeah, and I want to be really clear about this. Heck no.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
No, we don't ask permission because they'll say no. But so we are violating the mortgage. It's a breach of usually it's clause number 16, 17, 18, the due on sale clause.
right.
And so that's a risk that I have to be aware of too.
Right. There are two provisions in the mortgage that I want to note. It's you have to advise the lender if your interest is changing to
I don't
any
have to advise them
or anything. And then that's under the terms that the title holder has to comply with. And not only that, there's also typically a provision that applies that if you are renting out the property or someone else is in the property, then the lender has the right to assign those rents to them if, those payments aren't being made. So have you run into any situations where that has come up? Has a lender either ever found out that you own? So now I'm so interested. So please.
Let me pull the rod in. Let's talk more. So the due on sale clause does so it's an acceleration clause. Technically, it's like we noticed you transferred. Number one, I'm not asking permission. It's a defined default in the contract, right? Between the borrower and the lender. And for the sake of clarity for everybody on the call, because I explain this a lot, when you get a mortgage, you're actually giving a mortgage to the bank, right? The bank gives me money, I give them a mortgage. Basically, I'm saying you can foreclose on me. That's what a mortgage does. So in the mortgage contract that I sign with my lender as the original borrower, I'm saying that you can accelerate my loan and foreclose on me if I don't meet that, if I transfer the property to somebody else without your consent. Well, we're aware of that. And on the sub 2 approach, my company makes sure everybody understands there is a due on sale clause. If it gets accelerated, it could result in credit damage or foreclosure if we can't resolve it. Typically, the solution is to sell immediately or refinance. Or I've also started another company that specifically fixes due on sale loan accelerations. And we haven't failed yet. I can't promise that we will succeed every single time, but usually a conversation with the lender say, you go back to the story. Hey, they were in default $28,000 and this person came and caught it up and they've been making payments ever since. Do you really need to pursue due on sale loan acceleration here? Usually they still say yes, and we have to resort to some sort of technical compliance where we deed it back to get them off our backs. But I'm not aware in most mortgages that I've read, and I do read a lot. I read laws for fun, just not in New York and New Jersey. Are you compelled legally to notify the lender of putting a renter in a property?
No, you don't have to notify them of putting a renter in the property, but you do have to let them know if your interest is changing. So so even if buyers or owners want to transfer their interest in the property to an LLC or a trust, they still have to tell the lender.
Now, is that part of the mortgage contract? And this is where I get into debates a little bit with people. Is that in the mortgage contract? So is it a violation of contract, or is there a law that requires that?
It's the contract.
So even still, so if I don't notify you and I transfer, if you're the lender, then I'm breaching one provision so that I can breach the other, but it's still just a contractual breach. It's a civil issue, not a criminal issue. Are we on do we agree?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a civil issue, non-criminal, and that's where I live in this gray area, but that's why I tell people there has to be a story. There has to be a reason or a purpose you're doing this because everybody's taking risks. The buyer's taking a risk, the seller's taking a risk. It's
Mhm.
non-standard. It's weird. You don't just do it for fun. It's not a notch on your belt. I mean, it is, but it's not something you should pursue for that reason.
And so I have another question. How are you financing these transactions? If you are taking title, are you using a traditional lender? How does that work?
It's already financed.
So you're
Yeah.
it's like a purchase money mortgage.
That's please define that for me because I see that term every time I look it up. I'm like, oh yeah, and then I forget immediately 7 seconds later.
So, they're more typical in New York than they are in
Yeah.
Connecticut, although they are still quite rare. But it's a loan where the seller is typically providing financing to the buyer for
Mhm.
real estate. So,
Okay, yeah. So yes, so let's just take a scenario where a house there's no debt on it, and I go buy it from a seller. They give me seller finance, is what we would call that.
mhm,
Now, is that a purchase money mortgage situation for you?
yes.
Okay.
And
Is there a
I've done several of those. They are actually not so uncommon here in Connecticut. I have
yeah?
builders who say, I'll give you a full price offer to the 80-year-old who owns the house outright. I will give you a full price offer, $1 million. I want you to hold a note for 12 months while I knock down the house, build a new house, and then refinance it once I get a certificate of occupancy. I'll either have sold it or I'll refinance it with the C of O and take you out of your $1 million. And I'll pay you interest payments only for the first 12 months. That's the scenario we encounter with builders and empty nesters here in Connecticut.
That makes sense. So is there a term or a special condition that comes along with purchase money mortgage as opposed to a mortgage?
You have to get permission from the lender. So we do tell we do tell the lender, and then the lender has to say, well, builder, well, owner, you're behind us. If any money is
Yeah.
borrowed on this house, you're not first in line, and so that's got to be worked out.
Okay.
Let me back up and say, Amanda, can you introduce yourself to us? You,
Welcome to the show, Amanda.
who are you anyway?
So much for having me.
Why are you here? Okay.
So I am an attorney. I practice in both New York and Connecticut, and I represent a buyer or a seller or on refinances, and I do traditional closings in both states.
Do you do Manhattan?
Yep, I do. And
Are
so
we
I'm
required in Connecticut and in New York to hire an attorney to handle the transaction? Is that why he keeps talking about the fact that he's not doing a lot in New York?
correct. Yeah, it seems like that would not be an as easy of a
Well,
go.
he encountered a tremendous amount of friction from the attorneys. It also occurs to me that the role of the title company in New York is quite a bit different from that in, say, Florida. So, can you explain to us at a high level the differences between how New York, Connecticut, and Florida operate?
So I'm not as familiar with Florida, but I know that in Florida, it's essentially the title company that handles the closing. Whereas in New York and Connecticut, a purchaser and a seller each hire their own attorneys. The seller's attorney will draft a contract. The buyer's attorney will review it with their clients. There's usually a little bit of back and forth and negotiating. And then once all the provisions are agreed to, then both parties sign. And so it's at that point of fully executed contracts that if I were representing the buyer, I would order the title and municipal search. And so I work with a couple different title companies in New York and Connecticut, and they're the ones who have their searchers go out to the building departments and go through the land records and pull all of the elements that we need for a title search to make sure that title is marketable, meaning that there are no liens or encumbrances on the property that would prevent title from also issuing an insurance policy on the property. And so the title company comes back to me with those title and municipal searches. I review them, and so I can determine what the legal ownership is, what the property meets and bounds are. So what's the legal description of the property, and then determine what liens and encumbrances need to be resolved prior to closing. So typically, there's a mortgage on the property, and so we work out and get the payoff and make sure that that's resolved at closing. And then the title company will issue an insurance policy on the property. And so that's, the one-time payment, and then the title policy lasts for that buyer's ownership of the property.
Can I ask you some really stupid basic questions about title companies? What would make one better than another? If you had 5 different title companies running the same title, the same, exam on a property, how similar would they be? I mean, they should be, it should be almost identical, right? So what would differentiate one from another?
Quite frankly, it's relationships and who you like to work with. It's sometimes the speed at which they can provide title searches or municipal searches. In New York, it's municipal searches, which are the searches that provide if there are any open permits or certificates of occupancy, if those types of things take a little bit longer than they do in Connecticut. But it's really who you like to work with. I mean, I see people get poached from, different title companies, and it's, who you want to be involved with.
Can I
Caleb?
thank you for saying that. But I just raised capital for my title company. We just got funded. Yay me! Congratulations! Great time. Exactly what I told people was, title has been around. The title industry has been around for over 100 years, issuing title insurance. The whole business model is turned into software at this point. You click some buttons and you have some basic education, but if you get the license and the software, you're in business. You're a title company. So they're all the same. The only difference is the customer experience. And like she said, it's the relationships. And that's exactly what I've sold people on. Is like before the show, I said, my first company, we've got only 5-star reviews. We've got more 5-star reviews for company number 1 than any title company in the state of Colorado that I just started in has reviews, period. And I'm like, so I'm going to walk in. That's my foundation, is these 5-star reviews. My point of differentiation, to your point, is that I'm going to build relationships with people like you guys and Amanda. And I'm going to have a reputation for being outcomes oriented, not process oriented. Everybody's got a checklist, but it doesn't matter if I did my whole checklist if you don't get the result you came to me for. And that's what makes the difference in any title company. The only way to
occurs
differentiate.
to me when I'm looking at this map of all the deals that you're doing around the country that I really can't ignore it, just because there's not a lot of it going on here in Connecticut. This map shows me that there's clearly a need, that there's a lot of people like the one you just described in Colorado who've got a 3% mortgage, and buyers who are like, hey, I'd like to be your partner on that 3% mortgage. I'd like to be your partner on this house that is currently not producing me, not cash flowing. I want to be your partner. In this case, you said, I want to be your partner. The difficulty is what you call the gray area, where we
Yep.
don't tell the lender. And that, I think, causes a lot of people to say, as a realtor, I wouldn't want to be recommending to my client. Well, there's creative ways to solve this, but they're in that gray area. Because I think that my boss, the person holding my license, would say, no,
Yep.
you can't put your clients into the gray area. So, but clearly there's a demand for it out there, and I'd really like to hear where this demand is coming from, because it occurs to me that now that we have 6 and 7% interest rates, a lot of people are really loath to give up their 3% interest rates. That's one major reason. Second major reason is, in some of these markets are starting to see a slowdown, Austin and Sunbelt, of the real estate prices. And is that also causing people to say, can you help me, Caleb? I need a partner.
Yes, it is. Which question do you want me to answer? You're on the right track. There's a lot you're thinking in the right direction. Let me talk to the realtor piece at first. I think a lot of the people in the creative finance space feel like realtors and attorneys are their enemies. And I'm like, they have they're licensed professionals with a fiduciary duty. You can't shake a stick at that. And then title companies. The reason I'm starting in Colorado was there's a recent vacuum of creative friendly title companies, as we call them. They're scared because they don't understand it. Well, when you talk to an insurance company, if they don't understand something, why would they do it? They're like, I don't understand this. I'm out. I'm like, that makes sense. I do understand it. I'm in. And so there are people who have these needs. They're behind on their mortgage or they're stuck on their price way up here and they want their price at any terms. It's like your price, my terms, low interest or low down payment or whatever it is. So I can get into that. But there's a lot of these low interest mortgages. A lot of them have some equity right now. So it's like you probably have to give somebody 50, 60, $100,000 up front to kind of cash out most of their equity. But to take over that payment, a low interest mortgage is an asset as far as I'm concerned. I would buy it. It costs money. It's worth, so that makes the property worth more. If market value is here, I could, not that I should, I could easily justify paying, 10% over what the market of price of that property is if it comes with a low interest mortgage. That's still got 25 years left.
Amanda, can we address this gray area part now? I mean, can you tell me what whether there is some sort of conversation we could have with the lender where they would say, "You're right. We like the idea that there's now a partner. We just need to make sure that Caleb is on the hook for all the same things that the original client mortgage holder was on the hook for. I mean, if he wants to join the party, that's fine, but we want him to sign on the dotted line and be that partner." Or are they likely to say, no, 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 no. We like it just the way it is. We'd just rather foreclose and take a loss.
The gray area makes me very uncomfortable when I sign mortgages with my clients, when I'm representing the buyer. I always go through that provision saying if you're going to transfer your interest in this property to anybody else or any other entity, then it's going to be, you have to let them know. You are contractually obligated to let them know. So they are legally on the line or on the hook if they don't let the lender know. I've done quite a few transactions.
What happens to me if I hook up with Caleb and he's my partner and they find out? I mean, really nothing worse than the fact that I was going to lose the house anyway. Is that why it occurs to me a lot of people are going to sign up with Caleb because, well, I guess I could lose the house because I've already bought the second house, he told us. And so I'm either going to lose the house or I could just give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean,
is there any penalty? Am I going to jail? No.
I mean, you'll be foreclosed on. I mean, just the time and scrutiny it takes for, I've had a few clients who transfer their interest in properties from themselves personally into trusts. So they're into revocable trusts. They're essentially still, they're a trustee of the trust, they're the grantor, they have full control and authority. And just getting the lender's authorization to transfer interest from, John Smith to the John Smith 2025 revocable trust takes months.
Yeah.
And so I think
too much friction in the system. I mean, we're already.
That's what I'm talking about.
Too much red tape.
I'm just a walking bottle of lube. We just get stuff done.
You're like Harvey Keitel in Pulp Fiction. You come walking in and solve the problem. But I just curious. Let's take Caleb. You own the property now. Let's say it gets sold. It gets sold again. That instance of all of this transactional stuff that you've done, where does that show up? How does that show up on title later?
Oh, we record a transfer. So it would go from, like, if I sold to you, the deed history would show Caleb Christopher as the deeded owner, like I'm the borrower. So there's a deed to Caleb Christopher from the previous seller. There's a mortgage from Caleb Christopher to USA Bank, whatever. And then we do a transfer, another deed from Caleb Christopher to Roberto. And that's on public record. So the lender can discover this. But you know what? the FHA lender guidelines indicate that if the lender discovers a transfer without their consent, without the consent of the FHA, then the loan servicer must accelerate that loan. So they're obligated to, if they discover that breach, they have to accelerate. But guess what? I had a conversation with, I'll withhold the lender's name, and I pointed back to the FHA lender guidebook, the like 4,000 dot whatever, which I read, which is a lot of pages. And I said, yes, you have the obligation to accelerate, but you also have a duty to reduce the number of foreclosures that cost the FHA money. And I am providing a solid solution that does not lose anyone any money. So you're required to pursue remedies with the borrower. And your only interest, this is when they responded with a due on sale, your only interest so far has been in foreclosure, which does not align with the guidance you're required to follow. Let's work a deal. And that's where I've had some that's my special sauce, is like I can point to yes, we've got a contractual violation, but it's not a criminal issue. To your point, Amanda, it's like, yeah, you have a legal obligation, I guess, from a civil standpoint, but there's a doctrine of efficient breach as well, where it's like, if it makes sense to me, I can breach a civil contract, and the consequences are baked into the contract. If I violate this clause, then you can accelerate. Right. That is, you have recourse baked in if you want to pursue that as a lender. So, and this conversation I have to have again and again. Like, this is a weekly conversation with me, real estate agents, and anybody and their mom. But I will not ask permission from a lender, because they will say no. And then I could potentially be in trouble. Like, then they might have some sort of other case against me, other than we had an opportunity, we took it. You ask forgiveness, not permission.
And you're providing a benefit. You're keeping.
I am, and I'm helping people. I'm not taking advantage of people. There are dirtbags out there, and so that was the reason I started my company. Was I want this to be safe, legal, and ethical, and that means a conscientious person needs to be involved as the guide. Because I saw people doing it without a guide, and I've seen people go into default and ruin somebody's credit as well, and that is the risk. You have a lot of thoughts. I see it.
I don't know where to begin.
If you don't like question my character or whatever you want, like I'm an open book. I'm here to help people. I love what I do.
How is this being handled? Can you talk about regional differences? We've already talked about why we're not doing this in New York and in Connecticut, but can you talk about the regional differences? Can you give me specific markets like, I don't know, Florida or Texas or California, and maybe some case studies, so I could understand that maybe the Colorado example is not the only example out there?
Oh, it's not. I mean, so my creative TC does 30 to 50 of these deals a month. I'm not the buyer on all these deals, by the way. I'm a facilitator. I help other people do their deals. So that little map you saw is other people, and that's a year and a half out of date. We've done thousands of deals. Regionally, anywhere you have the certificate of occupancy requirement, it slows it down. The people who come to me are expecting kind of a fast transaction. And so, yes, I have done one in New Jersey. I probably have done one in New York, but I don't anymore, because from my labor perspective, it doesn't make sense for me, because I can't charge enough to do this as like I don't want to call myself a leech on the transaction, but from a financial standpoint, I'm just an extra cost.
Wait, so there are some states that don't require a certificate of occupancy?
Yeah.
Wow, that is wild.
So when I'm looking at San Antonio, what does the acquisition price mean, 270,000, and the EMD amount?
So I handle a lot of contracts, real estate contracts. So this is pulled out of the contract. Somebody bought a house, and we have the zip code in the city, but I'm not giving the actual full address. So we pulled from our database just to show that somebody bought they paid $270 for a sub-2 deal, and the EMD was only $1,000. So I wanted to be able to run a report and say the average EMD for an investor creative finance purchase is X. And
EMD
a lot of times
stands for what?
Earnest money deposit.
Okay. So for $1,000 down, they made a deposit of $1,000 and acquired $270,000. And it says here, possibly seller finance. What does that mean to me?
So you got acquisition and disposition type. So I'm dealing with an investor. Let's talk A, B, and C. A is the original borrower who's now the seller. B is some sort of middleman who's going to take intermediate possession of the house. And then party C is an owner-occupant buyer. who can't get regular bank financing. So there's an entire business model where party B goes and finds a seller who needs to sell on creative terms. I pick it up with a low entry fee, and then I turn around and remarket on a wraparound financing. That's that. I guess you could think of it like the purchase money mortgage, except it's an all-inclusive mortgage or deed of trust. And I take that 3% interest rate and I mark it up to 7%, and I sell to somebody who can't get a regular bank loan. I still qualify them. I require a pretty fat down payment, but I stand in the middle as the investor. I've made a promise to A. So B promises to A, I will pay your mortgage. And then B sells to C on creative terms as well, seller financing. I'll provide financing for this if you bring me a fat down payment and your credit's okay. That way, I've got a pile of cash that I can use to make payments in case my buyer doesn't. But that's a whole business model, and we mark up the interest rate and just arbitrage the difference there.
Amanda, what do you think about that? Sounds like very efficient. B is helping out A and C because C can't get traditional financing.
We're promoting home ownership. We're saving somebody from foreclosure. There's a lot of...
And when it all goes bad, the bank forecloses.
Yeah. So have you had, C, have they defaulted
Oh,
yet?
yeah.
I mean, what do you do in that case? How do you act?
Well, the thing is, and I took a note, it depends on what state you're in, because Texas has very fast foreclosure laws. Like, if the moon is right and the color of the stars is the whatever, like if everything aligns, you can foreclose 21 days after default in Texas.
Wow.
That's really freaking fast. Nowhere close to New York. How long does it take to foreclose in New York?
Months, years.
So the expense and the risk is higher for the seller, very much higher for the seller in New York as opposed to a state like Texas. So usually a deed of trust state allows faster foreclosures than a mortgage state, but that's not always true. But as a rule of thumb, and I deal with a lot of different states and things, and that's part of our consulting is, as the seller, you're at a higher risk in this state versus another state because it takes you longer to foreclose. So if the buyer is going to default on you, you want a pretty fat pile of cash to offset that risk, either as a down payment or as an emergency fund. And don't let it burn a hole in your pocket, because if they default, you're going to have to be making your own mortgage payments for a while, and you'll have to pay the cost of foreclosure.
So what you're describing is C defaults, but I'm holding, in this case, 10%, $27,000 of their money. So I can either remarket it and try and, take a few months of fix it back up, take a few months of vacancy and remarket it and try and find somebody else. That's probably most of the time what happens. But in Texas, you're saying I have a very short clock, a very short window within which to do that, because if the bank sees this, they're going to foreclose immediately, right?
No, you're close, but there's a little bit of overlap there. The faster foreclosure is good for a seller because they can pursue. They don't have to hold carrying costs as long while they pursue the foreclosure.
Okay.
If you've got a $3,000 a month mortgage in New York and it takes 12 months to close, that's $36,000 of carrying costs plus the cost of foreclosure, like hiring attorneys and court fees and things like that. So you're $50,000 out of pocket just to foreclose on somebody. Well, if they made a $50,000 down payment, that's not a deal. That's not enough to offset the risk and pay me. So we have to have really fat down payments in a slow foreclosure state, and you can afford to be a little looser in the fast foreclosure states.
And I'm wondering, what are your criteria for, those party C buyers? I mean, the mortgage.
I mean, my criteria are relatively high. However, and this is where I talk to investors, I want to make sure you get into this deal. It's really cool to do a deal with $0 out of pocket. It is unethical to do a deal with $0 in your pocket. Because you have to be able to afford carrying costs and things like that. You've made a commitment to somebody else. Yeah, legally, but ethically, as a person, you need to be able to uphold your promise that you're going to pay. And that means you don't have $0 in the bank account. So if it takes all of your cash to do the deal and close on it, and now your bank account's empty, that's not a deal you should do.
How much competition are you dealing with?
I don't know. I'm like a sub niche. Like, my whole world is this, but it
is that gray?
To you, it's this. to you guys, what I do is like this piece of what you would see in the world. So I don't feel like there's a ton of competition, but there's not a lot of need either. But when you need what I do, you need what I do.
So how do people find you generally?
Me showing up and educating. That's it. They see my face, they see my name, they hear stuff, and they're like, "Oh, call Caleb. I heard something weird. Call Caleb." And building trust, right? Because
Mhm.
there's dirt bags all over the place, and I'm here to show up and prove I'm not one of them, and I help to fight the dirt baggery that can occur. Because
And
anytime
you've
you're
been
doing
doing this for
weird
how
stuff,
long?
3.5 years.
And how did you start? What was your first deal and how did that come about?
I was in a creative finance mentorship and I learned how to go get the deals. They teach you how to go find them and structure them. But then I brought one to a title company and I was expecting them to like help me make it perfect. And all they do is make sure it's not illegal and they'll close it. And I'm like, there's a lot of room for people to do each other dirty here. And there's not a lot of guidance. And so I started a company because of that. I'm like, it shouldn't be like this for when people do this. There needs to be a clear guide. And I'm very comfortable standing on a soapbox and browbeating somebody who wants to do something. Like investors are known for just being like, let's get it done. I don't care about XYZ. And I'm like, hey, yes, you do, or you're not my client. Like there's a right way to do this because if it's a cash transaction, great, do your thing, your hands off. But you have a long-term relationship with this person now. You had better honor your word.
What percentage of these deals are successful versus what percent blow up for any number of reasons? So you just described in Colorado where you took title
Mhm.
and you're making the mortgage payments. So I would consider a success is a complete success is where you do right, as you say, do right by the original seller. You've taken title, you've made the payments, and eventually you've basically sold that and paid them and paid the lender. A complete success. What percentage of the time?
I would say it's very high. I don't know. I don't know a number. I would say 80+% of the time when the deal makes sense. I see problems when people overextend. They buy too high, they put too high of an interest rate, wraparound mortgage on it, something like that, or they underqualify their borrower. Like I said, I would have high standards for a borrower. You need to have enough cash out of pocket as a down payment to offset the risk and to basically fund my emergency fund in case you stop making payments so that I can keep making my seller's payments so that I can afford to pursue a foreclosure against you. But it also comes down to setting good expectations on the front end, right? Hey, if you can't make payments, talk to me. Let's have an ongoing conversation. And it's possible I could just give you cash for keys, right? You deed it back to me. If life becomes intolerable, like you can't make the payments anymore, I'm helping you get into a house because I help somebody stay out of foreclosure. So if you damage me, it could damage them. Please don't do that to them. And on the front end, if you're setting these expectations, people understand that they're not just like, oh, screw the investor. Too bad for Caleb. He's the investor. He's making tons of cash on this deal. It's not that. It's I've made a commitment to make sure these people get paid. Their mortgage stays out of default, and you're part of that picture. You know what I
Roberto
mean?
and I are your investors, and we've put up $1
Sure.
million. And what you're saying to me is that 80% of the time this works. So we're gonna end up underwater 20% of the time, but 80% of the time we're going to take title to a property. We're going to find it re-rented or resold, flipped, and we're going to get out with a profit. But 20% of the time we're not going to. Somebody's going to default. That renter isn't going to make his payments. I have let me back up. I have a friend who bought 60 units in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and
Mhm.
he fixed them up and he rented them out. And then he said, and then the market turned, and he said they started to not make payments. This was at the bottom of the socioeconomic, right, in one of the toughest markets in the country. He thought he was, solving the affordability problem. When they don't have any money, they stop making payments. He says I couldn't do it anymore and I had to get out and I got out at a loss. So what you're
Yep.
saying is it actually works 80% of the time. That seems very, very high to me.
It that feels low to me. I like that includes the ones where it doesn't make sense. Like as an investor, you have to buy good deals. You succeed when you buy. Hold on just a minute. My kids just started a battle in my next.
I don't know, Amanda. I mean, I
I
think that
like his worldview. I like that he, is an ethical guy who's trying to do right by people, and his hope is that in turn people will not take advantage and will do right by him as well. That being said, I've seen too much. I don't know if there is that sort of security that I would need to see on a deal.
but he's pointing out to me an inflexibility among lenders that I think probably needs to be addressed. We're already seeing the president and the others down in Washington talk about portable mortgages and other ways to address
I
the
think
fact
that
that we've gone from a 3% environment to a 6% environment, and what can we do to keep people in their homes? And he's saying, I'm doing something to keep people in their homes because there is a bit of a crisis, there is a need for this, and you need only to look at his map to see that it's happening.
right.
And I wish it could happen in the daylight, but it can't because of
I
lender inflexibility at looking at creative ways to get people out of their mortgages and and get it remarketed.
agreed. I mean, I think the president's proposition of doing a 50-year mortgage is ludicrous. I think he's trying to make monthly payments lower, but if you look at it, people are going to be spending more long term. If
Well,
you're
they're tossing a lot of stuff at the wall. I'm talking about the fact that once you get a mortgage, a lot of people down there are saying you should be able to take it with you instead of, as Caleb said, giving up your 3% mortgage. And now they're buying the new home at 6%. They should be able to move that 3% and move it into the new property. Can't do that right now.
right,
Inflexible terms.
right. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I am in awe. I do like what you're doing. I think that as an ethical guy, you want to make it safe, legal, and ethical. I think that's great. I just, I need more security.
What
It's
would make it more secure for you? Because I think this is where you get to shine is like, what would make it secure? Like, let's just say I'm going to do, if I'm one of your clients and I'm going to sell, I'm a seller, I'm going
okay.
to sell to Caleb on creative terms. He's going to take over my mortgage payments. Help me make it less risky. What would you require?
Maybe a personal guarantee.
Okay.
I think a personal guarantee is what I would need to see in order to, have you personally on the line.
Is
On
that
mortgage.
enough? I'm going to tell you, I'm
Not
in a building
necessarily, 'cause
here.
you might have everything in a trust or an LLC or
Yeah.
something.
Yep. I didn't want to bust the bubble. It is a valid, that's one of
Yeah,
the valid methods to reduce risk. But
yeah.
what
Do
else?
you see a lot of PGs in order to get through this risk? No, not a lot of PGs.
Interesting.
So really the only recourse, you say, I'm going to make the mortgage payments, and the only recourse is they can foreclose on you. And in Texas, they won't have a difficult time doing it, but in
Right.
New York, they would.
Yeah.
Understood.
So there's a number of factors, and I don't want to do the speaking for you, Amanda, but there's a number of factors that we can do to make it more secure. But also from an investor standpoint, I'm not going to just hand you all my cards if you're on the other side of the table. But if I'm your client, I'm asking you, how can we make this more secure? So a personal guarantee is one good step.
Mhm.
Anything else you got?
I mean, having first lien position, which the mortgage already is
Yeah.
assuming.
Caleb, do you do this if you're not in the first lien position? You're not. The mortgage is already in the first lien position. You already accepted the fact that you're sitting behind the lender.
Hmm.
Yes?
Yeah. You can
And you're
still
okay
close.
with that.
You can still
100% of the
foreclose.
time, those deals are sitting behind the lender.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you heard of a contract for deed or a land contract? It's usually in the Northeast. It's a land contract.
No, tell us about that.
Okay. So again, in certain states, there's a right of forfeiture. So it's more like a glorified tenant. Um, I don't want to say rent to own because that's a complicated mess. I hate rent to own. I like lease with the option to purchase.
Mhm.
I don't like rent to own. But a contract for deed is it's effectively seller financing, just like this sub two, except you have The buyer has equitable title and I retain legal title. And so in simple terms, they're like a glorified tenant. They're making the payments. They're responsible for taxes and insurance, though, and maintenance on the property. But if they default relatively early in the contract, the first 4 years or so, depends on the state, I may have the right of forfeiture, where if I just give their down payment back, I can evict them and start over. So it's much faster than a full foreclosure process. But if they've made enough payments, lived in it long enough, whatever that is, or in other states there's no right of forfeiture, I can still pursue a foreclosure. But the deed stays in my name the whole time legally.
Interesting.
So it's a blend between that full deed transfer and it's like, so title is a concept, a deed is a physical thing. So the deed still stays with me, legal title stays with me, equitable title goes to the buyer. And so if I'm the middleman investor, I'm going to buy and take title, and then I might sell only equitable title, and then they get the deed signed if and when they pay me off, which can include a refinance.
So how is equitable title? How is that shown? Because,
it is recorded on the title.
Okay.
On the public record, there's a contract for deed or agreement for sale that indicates that Caleb Christopher has acquired equitable title to this property. Basically, I get the full benefit and use of the property and the responsibility for making all payments related to it. I just don't have the final deed until I finish satisfying the requirements of that contract. So again, New York might be a tough customer, but that is one of those additional risk reduction factors. We just incrementally reduce risk. And all we can do, and I have a bachelor's in cybersecurity, so I come from the world of you can't be secure. It's a journey, not a destination. And so all we can do is reduce risk. This, and this. Personal guarantee, contract for deed instead, large fat down payment, like make me put a bunch of skin in the game as the buyer so that I have less incentive to default. Maybe a large amount of money sitting in escrow as a default emergency fund or something along those lines. A balloon
Randy,
payment.
could you talk about how it works in Connecticut and in New York in particular? New York and Connecticut title companies don't like creative deals. We've established that. But it does seem to me that in New York and in Connecticut, the attorney picks the title company and gets compensated. Some portion of the compensation comes to the attorney in the deal. How does that work exactly? Because Caleb talks about non-lawyer closings, title company closings. So how does it work in this area?
So what we do as the attorneys on the deals is that we review the title searches and we provide our analysis and make sure that when the property is sold, that there are no liens or encumbrances on the property, subject to, of course, real estate taxes, any easements, any state of facts that a survey would show, or anything that's on the Schedule A that's been deeded into the property. And with that, so we also make sure that the policy is in line with all of that, and any sort of endorsements and protections that the buyer needs are in there, because the policy that's being given is an indemnity between the title policy, the title provider, and the buyer. And so they have to make sure that that title insurance is covering their ownership of the property, so that no one can come through the cracks and state that they are a legal, like the legal owner of a property. Prior to, title insurance being so pervasive, people would just have a title search done and then rely on that. But the title search really only was based on opinions of attorneys and what was properly indexed in public records. It didn't, a title searcher could be competent, but there could be a number of title defects that can't be determined just from a search. So what the title policy does, and that what we make sure is covered, is that the insurance is like different from other types of property insurance. It's retrospective. So we're covering the owner's ownership of the property. So no one can come out of the woodwork and say, oh no, my aunt died in the 70s and I was left, I'm the rightful heir of the property. That can't happen. So
But what if she does? What if this woman does? Then what?
So
Who's responsible?
So if you've got title insurance, she can't do that. And then often as well, we'll order a title continuance, which is, so I mentioned earlier that as soon as you get fully executed contracts, you order the title search. But you may not close for a few weeks or even a month or so after that title search is delivered. So most good attorneys will order a title contin, which will cover anything that's been updated in the land records or in the building department from the date of the search through the date of closing. And so that way, nothing can really fall through the cracks and no one will have potentially recorded a false deed saying that they are the rightful owner of the property. And so if you get title insurance, which it really does astonish me when people don't get title insurance, because it can prevent exactly that from happening. Nobody can come in and say, hey, I'm the rightful owner of the property. Like, so there was, I'm sure you're all familiar with the developer deal in Fairfield a couple years ago, where there was seller fraud on a piece of land, and the developer bought this land and bought this property from the purported seller. It turns out the people they bought it from were not the rightful owner of the property. But when they bought it, they got title insurance, and they got title insurance for, I think, about $350,000. And that was the value of the land that they bought. But then when they developed the property, they had a $1.5 million house. And when it came out that the sellers were not the rightful sellers, there was really no recourse that the developer had, because yes, he did get title insurance, but that was only good on that $350,000 policy that they took out.
They got to claim the full policy amount though, right?
Yes.
Just not the 1.5. Yeah.
Right.
And they wouldn't sell him the land. They said, we had no intention of selling you this land for $350,000.
And now they don't have to. Why would you if there's $1 million house on your land? Yeah. Right. Pay him the $350,000. I'll take the house. Thanks. All day.
But I do want to understand, Amanda. So as a buyer in Connecticut on $1 million house, I'll hire an attorney and I'll agree to pay $3,000 for attorney's fees. But the attorney may make another, I don't even know what the number is, $3,000 on the title policy. They do the title search, and then they pick a title company and they buy a title policy for the transaction. They take care of the whole thing, and they get the $3,000 from their client, but they also get money from the title company. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't think that's well known and understood, but that's a reason, Caleb, maybe why this is so tightly held in Connecticut. And because the attorneys make money on the title process.
I mean,
isn't it typically done by a third party attorney?
Well, so it's different. So New York and Connecticut vary a little bit, where you have in Connecticut, if I were representing a purchaser, I represent the purchaser and the bank, and I get the title policies for both the owner and the lender. In New York, we've got typically a bank attorney, and then the purchaser's attorney, and then the title agent comes to the table as well. And they do a tremendous amount more of work, I think, in New York than they do in Connecticut.
And you've got real estate agents involved who are also getting paid?
Yes.
The closing costs astound me in these states. Investor direct to seller, just for reference for you guys. In not the Northeast, an investor going directly to the seller, taking it to a title company, their total closing cost is like $4,000 to $6,000.
Amanda,
title company.
This is important, Roberto. This is important. as our politicians look for ways for homeowners to get in an affordability across the country, they've got a big bright light on New York and Connecticut, and they're like, why are the closing costs so high? Maybe we should be more like some of those other states where the closing costs are so much lower. So I think that we've got a big spotlight on our backs here, that we've got an overly rigid, overly complicated, overly lawyered process here. And why can't we be more like Denver and
It
Florida?
drove me away. It did. It like, but I know people who invest like where the cost of entry is higher, there's typically also more money to be made. But
Mhm.
that's for business people. I don't know about the average consumer. There's more cost to be paid. But I wrote this down. So a title company outside of New York and Connecticut, a title company is an all-in-one. They do the title search, they do the title clearing. So they'll discover things and then they'll go like chase down people who need to sign stuff. They'll issue the insurance policy. They will hold escrow. They'll the lender money and EMD and all that stuff in trust as an independent third party, and they'll do the recording. They don't represent anybody. They're an independent third party. That's what a title company does. It's title and escrow combined. And the seller or buyer can have an attorney and or an agent as well, but all of that is optional. Otherwise, mom and pop can sign with John Buyer and just bring it to me. I go do all the stuff and conduct the transaction between them. What roles I just wanted to blend our worlds and understand as a closing attorney representing a buyer or seller, among these things, what do you do versus the title company? Search, clearing, insurance, escrow, recording.
So I do the clearing, I
Uh-huh.
do the escrow, I do the recording in Connecticut.
Okay.
In New
As it's
York,
that on the buyer side, because you've got buyer and seller side. So when you're the
yep.
buyer side, you'll hold escrow money, you'll do title search and clearing, well, clearing at least.
So as the buyer, I do the clearing and
Uh-huh.
I do the recording.
Hmm.
The seller's attorney is typically the escrow holder.
Right.
So
Okay.
when we
Yeah.
sign contracts, they take the typical 10% of the purchase price and hold that in their escrow accounts.
10%?
10%.
Oh,
Yeah.
Roberto, what have we learned in the last hour? I mean, I've learned that I can't dismiss this, that there's a real need and it's happening out there. The people are taking advantage of what I'd call creative title, creative financing in order to preserve the 3% mortgages and to and to prevent foreclosure. So I can also say that what I've learned is that so this is an option for a lot of people out there, but I've also learned that I probably need to talk to an attorney, that there's differences between how the different states handle this, and that an attorney like Amanda may introduce some clauses into my creative financing, such as a personal guarantee that may give me additional assurances if I wanted to pursue this. What else? I mean, is that that's what we've learned?
I've learned that I have to rewatch the episode because it is a lot to digest. I mean, the wolf here is gonna, I mean, if I know someone who's in trouble, I might say, you might need to call this fella just as an option, but you need to know that you should, because there's a place for what he's doing in our ecosystem. There just is. And there's probably tremendous demand for it. But it is, it's, Caleb's job to educate them and to make them feel comfortable, which he seems very confident in.
Mhm.
Yeah, I actually think that this is a tremendous business, Caleb. It bothers me a bit that it's unregulated and that I can't tell my lender, but it's a tremendous business, and I imagine it's going to get a lot bigger, and that you're going to do very well in it because there's plenty of investors who want to get in on this. There's plenty of people who want to prevent a foreclosure who want to get in on this. I have four kids in their 20s who are all finding affordability problems on their next home, and wow.
Tell
Right? Wow.
tell them to go sign up for now. They still have to have like anywhere from 40 to 100K cash as an entry fee, but you can go buy primary residence off of a wholesaler who found a creative deal. You'll find that middleman who found that they're direct to seller, so you got lower closing costs, and you can just take over somebody else's mortgage and
And
step
they
in.
do this and they hire Amanda to protect them. Is
Mhm.
Amanda going to say, any day, the lender could discover this and pull the rug out from under you and take your home?
I mean, I would have to draft I would have CYA letter making it very clear to my clients that they were advised of the risks of this.
I have title companies who, like, before I started mine, there are title companies who just adopted Caleb's documents. Like I said, I'm not an attorney because I didn't want to go through working for somebody else for a while, but I like learning the stuff. So I've got really great docs that indicate that everybody does understand. You have to initial different lines about all this stuff. And there are title companies who are like, we're putting Creative TC's docs in our closings from now on.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Wow. That is very cool.
All right, I've learned a lot. Thank you very much. I'm going to take us through our closing thoughts now, and this
Not
is
what I expected. Just but
no. Boroughs and Burbs. This has been number 209, and it's available Thursday, 3 o'clock live, and it'll be up here on boroughsandburbs.com just after it goes live. Thank you again, gracefarms.org. This has been tremendous, Roberto. I always learn so much with you on this show. And that's theengelteam.com, where you can find me. Amanda Burns in Greenwich, Connecticut, handling New York and Connecticut, including Manhattan, as we learned on the show. Yeah. Thank you, Amanda. And
Thank
Caleb, you can find him. He's got a tremendous amount of education up on his YouTube channel. And you can also find him at calebchristopher.io, where you can read about his different products and get in touch with him. Thank you both. This has been a tremendous show. I learned a lot. As Roberto said, I came in thinking no way, and now I get it. There's a need. You're filling it. Makes me very nervous, and it should. And people like Amanda are going to help protect me against the risk. But if I've got my back against the wall and I'm facing foreclosure, I get why people are doing this. So Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.